I invite Mr. Thorsten Schuette, Head of Sales from Maschinenfabrik Bernard KRONE, Germany. Mr. Pravin Dongre, Chief General Manager, Alternate Energy IndianOil. Mr. Nuriel Pezarkar, Founder and CEO, Noble Exchange Environment Solutions Private Limited. Narayan, Co-Founder, Carbon Masters. Atul, Kharate, CEO, IndianOil, Adani Ventures Limited. So this session is going to be chaired by the Joint Secretary Agriculture, Madam Rukmani. She is going to be a little delayed, but in any case, we'll start with the session, and she'll be joining us in the meantime. Can we please close the door? The objective of this particular session is to focus on the challenges around the feedstock topic, and the people we have on the dais right now, they come from different feedstock backgrounds, so it is taking into consideration all the possible feedstocks which go into the making of biogas. I will be personally taking over the part which is going to be focused on the agri residue part. We have Nuriel and Som who will be taking over from the MSW point of view. Atul is going to be talking about a mix of industrial as well as animal waste, which goes into the CBG production at his unit. And then we also have a special guest here, Mr. Schuette. He is here from Germany. He's from the company KRONE, which is one of the world leaders into the manufacturing of these agri residue collection machinery. So we'll also have a presentation from his side. Before we get started, I'm going to take you through an overview of the different kind of feedstocks we normally refer to and what are some, let's say, characteristics we deal with. This has been prepared together with our knowledge partner EAC. What we are going to look at is the different parameters of feedstock. As you see over here, we have basically bucketed them into 4 categories. The first is the agri or primarily agri feedstock. Then we have MSW. Then we talk about industrial. When we talk about industrial, we are largely referring to pressed mud. And then we talk about the animal waste. So the first thing we have at the moment of the 46 units which are currently in progress or are in different stages of operations, these are some of the examples. Verbio, Farm Gas, Sampoorna Agro, Ever Enviro, Noble Exchange, Spectrum, Banaskanta. These are just, it's not exhaustive list, it is just some of the examples. The first thing which we always talk about is the aggregation, and that is relatively a challenging aspect, not only for agri, but almost all the feedstocks which we normally refer to. But we'll start with the agri part. So agriculture residue aggregation is a significant cost over here, and we'll get into quantified numbers as well. We are talking about largely 2 kind of supply chain models which are currently in existence. The first is 100% owned, operated kind of a model, which is very rare. I mean, we are probably, I think, the only ones who are doing in the market at the moment. But I think that is also one of the key success factors. So that is one. The second thing is, which is largely the practice, it is 100% procurement-based aggregation model, which is coming from aggregators, small, mid-size, but that's a very fragmented, a very unorganized market to say so at the moment. And then we also have a mix, a hybrid of owned, operated, as well as moving into a procurement-based kind of a model. That is specific to agri-waste. What we see in the MSW is that it is supplied by waste management companies or the municipalities, either at no cost or at a certain marginal cost, or it could also be a revenue in most of the cases. But this is again case specific. We'll talk about it more in detail. For the industrial part, that is, let's say, the example what we have over here is, in this particular case, it is back-end integrated, which means own plantations. And then largely for the animal waste part, we are again talking about a procurement-based kind of a model, which is within a radius of 10 to 20 kilometers. I mean, in any case, a bottom line for any agri residue or animal waste kind of a thing, the radius plays a big role. So if you are going beyond 10, 15, 20 kilometers, the cost economics will probably start making, it will not start making sense. So if we look at what are the kind of capex, aggregation capex demand we have, in the first case, if it is owned operated, then we are talking about a significant investment which can go up to almost 30% of the overall project investment which is involved. And the important part is that also needs to be reinvested after every 5 to 6 years, because that is ultimately the life of the machinery. So you need to keep pumping the money back into the system. Whereas in all the other procurement-based models, at least the CBG producers do not have an investment. That's why it says none over there, but somebody has to invest. I mean, the aggregators will have to do it. The very important factor when we talk about the biogas yield, the first part, the agri residue base, I mean, these are the ones which are probably the most attractive from a yield point of view, and it can be anything in a range of 8 to even 20% plus what we have experienced ourselves. Of course, it really depends on the kind of, the quality of feedstock we use, the type of feedstock we are using, whether it is paddy, wheat, maize, mustard, the yields are going to vary. So this is a big range of yield what we get from the agri residue part. Whereas in case of MSW, what we understand is the yield would be roughly around 4 to 5% and more or less similar for the industrial waste as well. Whereas in case of animal waste, it would be largely be in the range of 1 to 2%. These are not, I would say these are largely representative, but there could be still some deviation because the overall, let's say the character of the industry right now is of a very evolving nature. So yes, the numbers could deviate a bit here and there. So these are some factors related to the residue types as well as the aggregation part of it. The next part what we want to talk about is the quality. This is one of the most important factors for all of the producers or even the aggregators, and what is the kind of risk which is associated with the continuity or the supply security we have from the feedstock. The first, in the case of agri part, we are largely talking about this is collected in the form of bales. Now the bales itself could be ranging from 20 kgs and it can go up to 500 kgs. Now that's a question of what is the kind of line design you have, what is the kind of investment one has made into these machinery. So that's a huge range, right? When we talk about MSW, the biggest factor over here is that it has to be properly segregated. Now, properly is a very vague term, right? I'm sure Nuriel and Soma are going to, get deeper into that part of it. For the press mud also we are expecting, normally you would see these units very closely related to the sugar mills, right? So that's what normally is the expectation or which could justify the economic viability. So loose direct coming from the sugar mills and the animal waste. Can we keep? Okay. So animal waste, fresh cattle dung in semi-solid format. So that's the kind of form of feedstock which we are normally expecting. Input quality as far as agri residue is concerned, moisture is the biggest topic to deal with, and we are talking about crops which could be very high in moisture, such as paddy, which could be at the source be ranging anything between 30-40%, and what a CBG producer normally is looking for is a moisture of less than 20%. So that is the toughest part. There are ways to deal with it. We'll talk about it later. Moisture is one. The second thing we are talking about is cut form. It's like you have tax deducted at source, we call it moisture deducted at source. So how do I get moisture lowest in the lowest form at the farm itself, and also to have it in a cutted form, so that there is a first degree of pre-treatment happening directly at the farm itself. Now that is again, I would leave it to Thorsten to talk about, because he's the one who's going to supply those kind of machineries. Lastly, high compression, that is something also which has an impact on the kind of storage infrastructure which is needed, and the durability of the feedstock, because this feedstock has to last at least about 8 to 10 months, right? So that's specific to agri. Then again, from the MSW point of view, we are again using the term segregated organic content. Industrial filter to separate suspended matter, and in case of animal waste, we are talking about how to minimize, to get the least sand and silt into the feedstock. Supply feasibility as far as agri goes, seasonal supplies, so risk is high, needs to be stored for the rest of the year, as we just mentioned. MSW has relatively a bigger advantage because it can be continuously supplied on a daily or a weekly basis. So the storage infrastructure or the kind of hassles which are associated with the storage is going to be relatively lesser as compared to what we are talking about in the agri scenario. Industrial waste has dependence on the sugar mills, which means they are not, they probably will not get the supplies throughout the year. It will also have a seasonal character to it. And then lastly, we are talking about the animal waste, which is again can be managed on a continuous daily supply basis. It could be daily or it could be, it's fairly much more continuous. So the two, from a pure supply security point of view, agri residue has the largest storage requirement in terms of time period. And then we talk about the industrial waste. Pre-treatment, in case of agri, we are talking about unbaling, shredding, and then there is basically that's largely the pre-treatment which is going to be needed. It's a mechanical downsizing of the bales which is needed. We'll not go into the details at the moment. This is just to give you an overview. MSW, there is no specific pre-treatment needed if the waste which is coming in is well segregated. And similarly is the case for industrial waste as well. And animal waste, we normally would need sieving. This is just to give you an impression of what are the different kinds of feedstock types we are dealing with in the different production units. And of course, there are risks associated with each of them. The cost factors is what I'm going to touch base upon now. For the agri, as I said, it is a significant cost, whether it is collected or on its own or if it is procured. Whereas in case of MSW, it could also be a revenue-based model, or it could have some marginal cost to it. So that makes it very different from an agri feedstock point of view. Whereas for the other two, industrial as well as animal waste, it is again a cost. So except for MSW, which can be further detailed by my colleagues here, what we understand is that is of a different character as compared to the other feedstock types. From agri point of view, when we talk about a farm to feed kind of a cost, we are talking about cost ranging anything between 2,500 rupees to 4,500 rupees per ton. And of course, it depends on what is the kind of aggregation model, what kind of quality factors we are talking about here. So these numbers are indicative. The lower part of the spectrum would be dependent on what is the kind of, let's say, ownership and operations are being conducted, or if it is a dependence on a third-party aggregator. So the costs will go on a higher side. And as I said, we are talking about farm to feed, which is not only talking about collection cost, it also means storage throughout the year, protecting the feedstock from two culprits, fire and water, throughout the year. So all these costs have been factored in. In MSW case, we are talking about segregated waste free of cost by municipal bodies. Some companies have to pay an annual royalty to municipal corporations and must probably sell CBG at a lower price than the market rate. I mean, these could be bilateral arrangements as well. Whereas in case of industrial waste, we are talking about a cost of less than 2,000 rupees per ton. And in case of animal waste, we are talking about roughly about 1,000 rupees per ton, which is going to be, and there's going to be on the top storage cost. Well, there are no as such fiscal benefits as of now which are being availed by any of the CBG producers, what we are aware of as far as this back-end feedstock tying up is concerned. But this is also one of the topics which we have raised at the ministry level, at both Ministry of Agriculture as well as Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. So that brings me to an end of giving you an overview of the different kind of feedstocks we have. And now we come to our speakers and the panelists. I'll request Thorsten to start with giving us an impression of what are the kind of high-end mechanized solutions which are being used in the European region, and to what extent we are able to bring those solutions into the Indian context as well. So I'll request Thorsten, he heads the sales for KRONE, and looking forward to get some innovative solutions from you, Thorsten.
Yeah, so first of all, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome from my side. Thanks to IFGE to give us the opportunity to join such a conference today. Before I start with the presentation of innovative mechanized solution for agri residue management, just let me give a short introduction or a short background of my profile. So I'm 45 years old. Of course, I'm from Germany. As a Bachelor of Economics, I'm working at KRONE already about 27 years. So our boss is always, he's told me at the first day, you're working one day for me or the rest of your life. So up to today, it's already 27 years. I'm the head of the sales for whole Asia, as well as in several European countries. And when I have the time at home, so my farm is located close to the KRONE factory. It's about 13 hectares, and we are concentrate of horses. So we have about 30 horses on our farm, so I have an agriculture background as well. Our factory, just for your information, is located in the northwest of Germany, in a village. A village means in Germany we are about 15,000 people, so not 1.4 billion people, so just 15,000 people. So each person knows about the other person. So a small village. The next biggest city is Hamburg in the north, which is 2.5 hours far away. And maybe you know, all of you, about Frankfurt as the biggest airport in Germany. So Frankfurt is 45 minutes flight time away from us. The KRONE company is owned in the 4th generation, so family driven. And each of you are welcome to visit our factory, and the family KRONE each day, they are inside the factory and inside the office. So as soon as you reach our factory, and if you have any discussion with us, you will meet the family as well. So, mechanization, as Ashish already explained, so I will give you a roughly overview. Of course, I would like to take the chance to make some advertisement for our brand, but Ashish said, please keep the presentation as an overview, a general overview, and not too much advertisement. So that's why you got such nice bags with our leaflet. So please have a look into our leaflets. And if you have any questions, the contact data are mentioned as well. So looking forward to the discussion already. So by the process after the rice combine, for example, harvest the rice. So the crop, the rice paddy is laying in the field. We have to take care about the moisture. So at the beginning, when the harvester was there, the moisture is too much for your power plant. So we have to accelerate the drying process. And for the drying process, you need to go for a tedder. So a tedder will spread the crop all over the field. And for the second step, the tedder will turn around the crop again, so that the drying process will accelerate a lot. Due to the fact that the crop is now laying all over the field, you need to bring the crop back to in line. For bringing that into a line, you need a rake. So the rakes normally starting with a working width from 3.5 meter up to the biggest one you can actually buy worldwide is about 20 meter. So it depends on the fields, and here in India, many times I visited several farms, but I'm pretty sure we will not find any fields where you need a 20 meter rake. So it always will be a rake which fits to the whole line, the whole mechanism you need. After the crop is laying in the line, the baler will come. And in our opinion, And when we are talking about baling, we are not really talking about, if we are, for professional baling, we are not talking about small square bales with 25 kgs, because you are having professional power plants, and you need the professional supply chain behind as well. So take into your whole consideration, into your whole calculation, that even if you have a very professional, and I'm pretty sure you will have the most professional power plants worldwide, you need a professional supply chain behind as well. So that's why today I'm concentrate on professional baling, and it will start with round balers. So normally the round balers which we are using in Europe, they will have a diameter of from 1 meter up to 1.8 meter. That is a typical size of a round baler in Europe. The advantage for you is that on tedders, rakes and round balers, the tractor you need, it's from, let me say, 30 horsepower up to 90 horsepower. That means already the Indian tractor, which is well known in your country, is already able to drive and to driven those different products. If you go maybe later on, or maybe at the beginning, it's up to you later at least, and you choose already a large square baler, you need a tractor with minimum 130 horsepower, which actually it's not, let me say, as easy to get in India as you can get tractors up to 90 horsepower. I'm pretty sure the horsepower on tractors in India will increase for the next couple of years, so from one day on you will have those tractors in your country produced by Indian manufacturer, or maybe they are imported from Europe or from the US, for example. And in the future, in our opinion, pellet will become more and more popular, especially for storages, and that could be a topic in the future. That means from 5 years on, you are thinking about a pellet press, but a pellet press so far, maybe stationary pellet press. So there's one manufacturer, I don't tell you the name, but maybe you can imagine from the picture. That pellet press you can use in field as well as stationary. Yeah, so that is ready to do both in field as well as stationary. And in Europe, there is one customer we have who is driving such pellet press stationary by electronic engine. So that could be an idea maybe for your whole supply chain in the future as well. So the baling solutions in several crops, most of the manufacturers, and I'm talking about the European manufacturers, they have already experience in paddy mustard straw, so that is no problem for those round balers. You don't need any modification or something like that. Already the standard equipment of a typical European round baler fits to the paddy and mustard straw. For sugarcane, you can use the round baler as well. So here you can see already some nice pictures. By sugarcane, it's more a question in terms of wearing. So the wearing is much more on sugarcane than on paddy straw. So the maintenance cost on baling sugarcane will be higher than on paddy straw. Maize straw, it's already done in Europe as well. So for example, in Italy, customers are baling next to straw, maize straw as well. So that is a topic each manufacturer in Europe knows already. So it could be baled by round baler as well as by large square balers. Large square balers, as mentioned here, they are ready in general to bale straw, but some manufacturers developed special machines which are more useful for baling sugarcane, because here you can see on the right side there's a nice picture. You can imagine how much dust, how much soil, how much sand will come into the machine. So you need to take care of those wearings. That's why on those special machines there is some additional metal inside, some special metal like Hardox metal, so that we try to keep the wearing as low as possible. From some manufacturers' side, it is also possible to bale cotton stalks. So just or already some trees, depends on the solution inside the bale chamber. You will be able to bale cotton stalks, and as far as I understood, in India you have several areas where cotton stalks in the future will be baled as well. Of course, you are the expert in biogas, in CBG. We are the expert in let me say agriculture machinery. I just would like to mention actually how the plants are, or the power plants in especially in Germany and close to our area are driven. This is one plant which is close to our factory, so it's just 20 minutes far away. It's completely driven by straw, and they are burning the straw, and has a output capacity of nearly 50 megawatt per year. And for such output, they use about 70,000 ton of straw. Such straw will, of course, after it will be burned, it will be create some power supply in gas or in electricity. It will be support the local heat network. And there is one company close to the power plant who is using the vapor. In general, the reduction will be 90,000 ton a year. So it's very useful for our environmentally. And the ash of such power plant will be used as fertilizer on the fields. So we put in straw and we will get out energy as well as ash for fertilizing the fields again. So it's a circle. Most of our power plants, and due to the availability of maize silage, are driven by maize. Maize as well as slurry, they will mixed, and then the whole process I don't have to explain to you because you are the expert. Of course you will get gas, and of course by the gas motor you can get it into electricity as well as about heating for the local network. So that is roughly an overview on those topics. For the biogas, of course, you need a more powerful machine. Most of the harvesters which are harvesting maize silage are driven self-propelled from, let me say, 500 horsepower up to 1200 horsepower. You need some special specification because it's like on your plant, you need to get the crop inside as short as possible. So that means the crop needs to be as short as possible. And that's why sometimes you need special specification on those machines. That's so far from my side. I'm looking forward to the discussion with you later on today, tomorrow. And as I said, our contact data you will find inside the nice bag. And apologize if I forgot any further information, but nevertheless, feel free to contact me, to contact our guys here in India at any time. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Thorsten. We'll get started with the panel discussion right now. The panel is going to be conducted in a presentation form. Each of the panelists is going to share their experiences in terms of feedstock management. And I was just having a quick chat with Nuriel, and he asked me how brutal can I be. So I told him absolutely. So we should really bring out all the issues, challenges, what we are facing in getting this feedstock supply chain implemented on the ground. And I'll be requesting Chetan to be minuting all of these inputs because We are going to be sending a consolidated input to the ministry from all these, the Q&A and the findings which we will be getting from the panel, the panelists over here. So I'll request Pravin ji to start with from IndianOil.
So thank you, Ashish ji, the distinguished panelist, and the present audience here. I think I will basically brief you on our experience. Probably we were the first company to, along with Ashish, to work on this agri residue-based 2G ethanol plant as well as CBG plant parallelly, and in 2 geographies. So we had probably experience across Haryana and Eastern UP also. So why agri residue will be a critical cog in the CBG? Probably means everybody knows that means among the agri residues, paddy straw is contributing almost 24%, right? So out of 174 MMT, major contribution will be paddy straw, and paddy straw based at least digestion technologies are available. So first point of connect for CBG into agri waste will be probably paddy straw only. And after that probably means as the bacteria in inoculum cultures develop, people can get into other cotton stalk, mustard straw, etc. Also, the agri residue has very high cellulose content, so probably your yields will be highest among other. And in combination with basically plant, where we are using press mud to some extent, and cow dung to some extent for developing the culture, there the yield further improves. So a combination of this feedstock will help you in getting optimized yields. So on back end side, what we have realized after efforts of last 2 or 3 years in developing this supply chain directly, indirectly with the help of governments, is presence of robust biomass supply chain is critical and will be essential for sustainable plant operation as well as getting the end product at cost effective manner. So other aspect what we realized was that because in some geographies there were exorbitant prices were being charged by the aggregators with the focus on trader sale operations. So problem is we have to take into account that means every segment in this value chain has to be sustainable so that the whole chain survives. And probably across the value chain the maximum investment will be by the CBG plant operator. So CBG plant, for CBG plant survival, the back end supply chain in the front end offtake, those risks needs to be mitigated so that the whole chain is stabilized. So and then availability of surplus biomass, when you have assessed, carried out surveys across various areas, whether it means Gorakhpur or Panipat, the surplus availability will be in certain clusters. So better you assess while before setting up the plant or even conceptualizing the plant, better do a proper assessment. In case of Gorakhpur means we couldn't, or even in case of 2G ethanol Panipat, we couldn't get in a round circle manner, right? Means those collection zones in certain particular directions. So so be clear what is the distance, which are the collection areas from where and what sort of quantity you will be able to, because based on that you will have to plan your storage operations either directly or indirectly. Then setting up this aggregation and storage system has to be commercially attractive business proposition, means it should not be loss making, so or it should not be just for profiteering purpose, because in the past we have seen examples that people were targeting a time horizon of 2 years that they should make money within 2 years period. So in that case then some other front end supply for front end value chain will not work. So to make it attractive and viable, probably means we'll have to give scale and economies in this biomass supply chain also. So, and if you have to produce the CBG at a viable, sellable rate, then you have to get the feedstock also at workable price, as we have been talking since morning. So, because in 2G ethanol plant, we'll talk about, I'll talk about with reference of 2G ethanol plant, because we tried to collect around 2 lakh tons here, and a lot of assessment was done, and based on that, then we extrapolate the system in Gorakhpur. So, we try to map even for 50 kilometers as well as 100 kilometers, but 100 kilometers, the logistic becomes, even for this size quantity, slightly uneconomical. It will be a economically challenge. So, if you are able to, depending on like 70,000 tons, probably you should be able to get maximum in 10 to 15 kilometers, probably for 2 lakh tons, 50 kilometers might be a sustainable range of collection. Now, for getting the supply chain in place, we had to map villages, then get them clustered along, and this exercise had to be done along with Department of Agriculture, because they know the cropping pattern and they know the harvesting pattern. So, along with them, we had to map village-wise, multiple villages, how they can be clustered, then how 10,000 or 20,000 tons depots can be set up, covering which sort of villages, right? So, this needs to be encouraged and promoted, because this is what we have been working with state governments as well as Ministry of Agriculture. Earlier the focus was to put the pressure on the farmer who is growing the crop, that you manage your crop. So, instead of pressurizing that single entity, probably it's better option to create a separate business value chain or business opportunity. So that means relations, or who are directly not working on the farm, they get the opportunity to develop a business and create a economic system whereby people get employment in the logistics, the complete logistics, from aggregation, transportation, so depot operations, like that. So, as we have been talking about, there are different probably steps in the collection. What we have observed, that means probably if you are having 20,000 or 70 tons of 50 ton plant, probably one single depot might suffice you, 20,000 ton, and probably you can have it at your plant itself. But in case you have, and that will be the least cost, as Ashish was also telling, that means the direct delivery to your plant will be the least cost. As soon as you increase the probably number of stages of storages, the e-storage, loading, unloading, storage, that will increase your cost by, our estimate is almost 700 to 800 rupees per ton, based on the experience so far. And further, probably every cycle of handling will, because they will loosen the twine, they will deshape the bales, so probably you will have to, while designing your plant handling system, if you are going for a mechanized system, probably think of how you are going to handle the deshaped bales or damaged twines, right? Otherwise, it will result in losses loss of feedstock and inefficient operation of the plant. So, and other factor probably might take care of while managing this biomass supply chain is, that means, because first stage of transportation will have to be very short, because as has been talked in the since morning, probably you might not get even 40 days harvesting cycle. It will be probably 30-35 days, and some areas you might get time to do the trading operation, but many areas even the farmers are not willing to wait for that also. So, your collection and accumulation has to be really fast. So, probably your first stage of transportation has to be within 4 to 5 kilometers, and second stage can be to the plant can be 20 to 25 or 30 kilometers also, that can sustain. Densification will reduce the cost. Now, depending on your plant's intake system and handling system, probably you can pre-treat or modify the shape of the biomass processing, pre-processing. in terms of pellets, because, but probably if you are getting into CBG, mean if you get into pelletization, probably means you will require additional pre-treatment at plant or pre-processing at plant, and you will have to do the economics. Now, from KRONE side, they talked about large, but here I'm talking about the existing systems in India which are available and which are basically promoted by government presently. And while they are there, probably means based on the field experience that we have realized, that means for probably we don't have those land, means large size land for sizing where you can operate these large equipments, apart except for few states. Even in Haryana, we had issue of with land holding sizing. So people, in certain areas, people had tried large balers, large square balers also, and round balers also, but against estimated output of 8,000 tons per season, probably they could get only around 5,000. So land farm size as well as the moisture content that has created these developments or outcomes. For our 2 lakh ton requirement, probably we had this estimate of equipment requirement, and we have been coordinating with government of Haryana for lining up this thing. Because as of now, these equipments are being given to only farmers or FPOs or village level entrepreneurs who are in through, because the subsidies being given by Ministry of Agriculture through and Department of Agriculture. So with the present normal subsidy of 40%, probably means the investment is coming to around 21 lakh for small size setup. And we had been requesting whether state government or central ministry that based on our field experience, that means if you have to give subsidy, give on the complete set and give the complete set to one person or one entity, so that he operates efficiently. Otherwise, during the harvesting season, we have seen that means balers are roaming around without rakers or without choppers. So there is no coordination, and the 30 days of harvesting period, you cannot afford to lose a single hour. So that's a critical factor in case you have to collect within your targeted collection area. And probably the modified trolleys also are, means how you transport, that is also important, and that will depend on what sort of unloading arrangement you are having at your plant. So take care of that thing. But the mute point here is that means this investment, if without subsidy, for most of the farmers is a challenge. So based on our interaction with FPOs also, like a group of farmers or societies, they are saying that without 80% subsidy, probably they may not be able to sustain or procure these equipments. So subsidy, right kind of subsidy, if you have to deploy the system through farmers, right kind of subsidy is required. Otherwise, probably Ministry of like PLI scheme is being launched for other products or other sectors. For commercial organizations or business enterprises, probably PLI scheme can be launched for, so that startups or in businesses wanting to get into this sector can be given incentive to participate in this development of CBG. So based on whatever we had done, basically we have actually seen how competing users can skew the market, make the product unavailable, sudden change in the regulation, like in case of Panipat, NCR, suddenly there was a ban on coal and ban on FO. Everybody left and right switched to paddy straw suddenly. So then as soon as there is this shortage of fodder in other states, fodder means this paddy stock started getting exported to UP, Gujarat, Rajasthan at whatever rate it was possible, right? Even government got had to intervene in that. So those type of issues are creating a lot of uncertainty and will be a challenge. So with the state governments, we have been insisting, at least both UP as well as Haryana, where means we are working. That means there has to be dedicated demarcation of catchment area, and probably means allocation of projects should be based on catchment areas, and at least no competing projects should come in the catchment area, so that there is no speculative pricing mechanism gets evolved. Otherwise, the plant will get affected, plant operation may not be sustainable. Then another factor which we have been insisting since 2018, since the time we started working on 2G and CBG, was that means in the initial period, none of the governments were ready to accept that means XU2 is required in India, because everybody was saying that in situ is the solution, and in situ is taking care of our situation. Unless you focus on XU2 as a sustained solution for managing the crop residue and have a dedicated policy at central as well as state level, probably it will not get that much attention. So, and as I told, capital subsidy of appropriate quantity to the FPOs or farmers who are interested working in this. Another factor which we noticed, which has affected drastically, means even our existing operation of our contractors, is this working capital and insurance. The appointed contractor is failing to, means even our existing operating contractors is not getting any insurance even after following up with multiple companies. So means there is a challenge in getting working capital because working capital is will be very critical for depot operation. If anybody wants to get into biomass, purely into biomass supply chain business, each 10,000 ton depot probably might involve working capital involvement of 2.5 crores. At a small entity level, it is substantial, and probably if you get into 20,000, 40,000, then the quantum multiplies. So, working capital availability and insurance, that will propel the sector and enable the CBG production also. Land at nominal lease rent has been our ask with all the state governments. Most of the time we have not been able to get that, but at least in Haryana, we are getting support from the district administration in identifying the lands, even private or panchayat land. But this will help, because almost this land cost at present market prices will contribute to 50 to 60 rupees, or probably it can go up to 100 also, depending on the area where you are operating, to per ton of biomass. So, and that will have cascading effect on the CBG cost. So, last point was that we had requested that biomass feedstock price declaration season to season should be done from government, so that there is no speculation, so that at least you have visibility as a plant operator or even as a person in the biomass supply chain business. That means what will be your economics and how you can plan your business. So we carried out multiple experiments. First we went into total turnkey aggregation, but they could not succeed because there was absolutely lack of required number of balers, and the balers were dictating the pricing terms. So unless there is equilibrium, that means in the end economics will work, and supply chain supply and demand will determine the pricing point. So if you ensure that adequate number of balers are available in that area, then probably there will be competition, and probably reasonable pricing will emerge in that area. Also, there are these other factors like demand from other areas, that that will probably be difficult to control, but at least if supply and demand is managed or adequately balanced, then probably prices will stabilize. Then, because of this, then the government of Haryana, we involved senior level officials, even PMO got involved, and then one model was developed. That means through FPOs and aggregators, government of Haryana will arrange for aggregation from farms, because the equipments are being given to the farmers, right? So they will arrange through these beneficiaries aggregation of equipment material from the farm and deliver it to the depots, and IOC will operate the depots and for front-end logistics to the plant. And in that, then for pricing, then a committee was formed by Government of Haryana with IOCL and the agriculture and the DC of the district to formalize the pricing each season wise. And as per that arrangement, they supported in addition of the land also, because there also the district's role is important, because the clusters and the farming pattern is known to the agriculture. So it's better if even if there is no committee, because in UP as well as Haryana also they have formed district level committees. But in case in your area the committee is not there, better to interact with the agriculture officers in that area and identify the clusters, because there is no point if you set up a depot which is not in the main cluster. And in this case, government has agreed for giving an incentive. This is an indirect incentive, basically to be passed on to the FPOs. So basically, price to the FPOs can be paid to this extent. That means it will, this 1,000 rupees will support the collection as well as working of the CBG plant. So we are trying to work out the mechanism for getting that incentive. Some proper modalities have to be worked out. So as I have told you, like means proper clustering had to be done. Like means if you see our plant is this red marked, and depending on the existing consumption pattern, type of rice paddy straw being grown, and the end users in that particular local area for the paddy straw, we had to go to the shape of cluster area is you are saying that it's not uniform all across, right? Then for last year we had for commissioning purpose we targeted lower quantity, and 2 depots were set up. And government basically, because it was post harvesting, so they fix up around 2,700 rupees price per ton for delivery from aggregators, and we could get quantity of around 30,000 MT offered from the aggregators. As of now, 11,000 tons have been delivered. And but another point that we have noted is that, and this everybody please, I think, keep in mind when you do your project on agri paddy straw or any other feedstock. Moisture during the harvesting season may not come down. With great difficulty, we could probably get to around 25%. Otherwise, maximum time it will be above 30%. And if they are not giving drying time of 3 to 4 days between the raking and baling operation, probably your moistures will be above 35 to 40% also. Now it has 2 implications on your CBG plant operation, probably because higher moisture content will promote the degeneration of the biomass during storage also. Probably it might require you to modify your material pre-processing system, because based on our actually installed equipment, many times certain equipments will not work at beyond certain moisture, certain equipments are not working below certain moisture also. So think of the moisture that is going to be available to you during the harvesting season, because at least some point of time during the harvesting season you will get higher moisture content directly to the plant also, right? Don't expect that means every time you might get 1-year-old stock if that person, or you are ready to, unless you are ready to stock that material separately. So probably you will have to plan your systems to have flexibility to process moisture content from 20 to 40%. And specifically, another point that we had noticed, as I pointed out, was bale size was varying. We had specified particular bale size. Now, while specifying your bale size, keep in mind that the baler, if you set the setting, it is twine to twine length. But after drying, and because of the compaction at the edges, the bales will expand by 2 to 3 inches. So if you are designing any material handling system, keep that in mind. Otherwise, there will be problem in your plant. Now, moisture content as well as collection, there are 2 aspects probably specific to India, and India we will face, because whether you are operating in Panipat, you could run the baler. In Gorakhpur, even the balers were taken from Haryana to Gorakhpur, but the balers couldn't run in the field. Why? Because the soil had a lot of moisture, so the balers were getting stuck, and the wheels were sinking. So along with the straw, even the soil was getting cut, and they were literally getting stuck. So so UP or eastern portion of India, probably there will be a lot of manual cutting, manual harvesting happens, and the soil condition in the Ganges Delta is different as compared to north. So probably you need different or modified machinery. That's also a fact for India. And probably a lot of eastern proportion of India where there is or eastern or middle central India where there is a manual harvesting, and land parcels are very, very small, like less than 1 acre. So there you will have to probably modify these balers if there are equipment manufacturers here. So that means this, because in manually harvesting, the farmers stacks the after harvesting the straw in a bundle at one corner of his farm, right? So you need stationary balers, you need stationary mobile stationary balers, right? The presses, hydraulic presses will not work. Hydraulic presses will increase your cost, and you will not get the speed and yields what is required. So, and insurance, either whether you want to do it yourself or through contractor, insurance, without insurance, he is going to load the cost. So that is one of the major factor, because if you if you have, any of you are from Karnal, Panipat area, probably how many depots catch fire during the harvesting and storage season. So from that perspective, that risk he will pass it on to the end user. So that cost will get built into the production cost. That we have to keep in mind. So another issue that we had faced was even with private lands or panchayat land. Panchayat land was, they were not ready to give a long-term lease. So we have been after governments, that means panchayat land, at least where they were, it's for biomass storage. There should not be any land use change requirement, and it should be available for 20 years. So we are following with both the state governments, but as of now, up to 5 years they have extended, but 20 years period, they are, as of now, nobody is willing. Even for private people are not willing for long-term lease. Then aggregation equipments, if they are not available in adequate number, in Gorakhpur we are really facing this problem, because the aggregation system was non-existent. So when you start from scratch, it's a tough uphill task. So be ready for it. And better to have tripartite agreement, because otherwise, at least with the shortage of balers and more higher demand, the baler fellow will be willing to, even for 10 rupees higher price, he will shift the customer. So be wary of that. Now to take control of this moisture in biomass, probably means like in case of grains or crops, the agriculture departments or universities need to develop package of practices for aggregation as well as storage, because in storage, if you don't store properly, or if the moisture content or aeration is not proper, you will have this safety hazards of fire. So that aspect needs to be kept in mind. So for this season, now we are targeting full capacity, full quantity. We have already identified around 138 acres of land across this area, and we are seeking this support from ministry. Ashish ji, myself, we are there in the committee formed by Ministry of Agriculture, and 80% in case you have to give support to the farmers, make it at least, if you 40%, nobody is ready to buy it, because nobody has that much money to put in, right? So adequate subsidy, make multiple entities eligible, probably for commercial or business entities. Instead of subsidy, probably they can go for PLI also. Then credit support will be very critical. That will help in reducing the cost of financing. As of now, these depot operators or private aggregators, they go for private financing, which is very costly, and that cost is getting loaded. And biomass pricing similar to a crop MSP, and which has to be the MSP has to be sustainable for all the linkage, as I told earlier. So therefore, government have to be judicious in formalizing this biomass price. And probably this is a last but not least, performance incentive for biofuel plant owners, because unless you are able to process and convert into a value addition product, because CBG is the one which gives a circular economy in localized circular economy without any burning, right? So that should be incentivized, and per ton of processing some incentive, if it is given, probably it can make the CBG ecosystem sustainable and viable. From state governments, we have sought a problem is in your area also. These two states, we are after them, and UP has in their policy incorporated. We have been working with UP government for this the development of their policy for last 2 years, and they have been very progressive and accepting while introducing all these changes in their policy. But we will have to have dedicated biomass clusters, and then it will have to be ensured, otherwise you will have this speculative pricing. And we have seen one plant in even Europe also getting shut down just because of this speculative pricing. So, and long-term land availability is critical, because nobody is going to invest. If you want to develop safety systems at your plant, the biomass depot operation, you want to install a weighing bridge there. Unless you have land holding for long-term, probably who will invest? So therefore, long-term availability of land is critical. Now, by creating the balance between supply and demand by deployment of dedicated billing sets is absolutely critical. Otherwise, the people who are dictating the supply will command premium. That's it. So, and support we had sought for 1250 rupees. Probably the forum can work out a suitable workable number. Thank you from my side. Right.
Thank you, Pravin ji. I know we are slipping on time, but these are very good inputs, so I didn't want to interrupt him. And such kind of inputs can come only when there is hands-on experience. So I think thanks a lot. Let's move on to the MSW part. But I'm already, as I indicated, there could be a 10-15 minute delay for the lunch. Let's have Nuriel.
Good afternoon. We'll quickly get on. What I'm going to discuss with you is a slight deviation from the agri residue and the other industrial waste forms. I'm going to dwell a little bit on what are 100 smart cities in the country, earmarked for prosperity, growth, global showcase, G20 summits. What is the kind of opportunity that they present for the biofuel sector? Before I do that, I will just run a quick introduction on what we do and what gives us the the opportunity to be standing here in front of you to discuss these very important challenges that face our CBG sector. So Noble Exchange, we've got 2 concession agreements in 2 cities of India, Pune, where we have developed a 300-ton plant in association with the Pune Municipal Corporation, and funded by the Serum Institute of India. They don't need any introduction for all the path-breaking work that they've done with the vaccines. And Bangalore, which is a 300-ton per day project, upcoming project, again in association with the Bruhat Bangalore Mahanagar Palika, and which is where we are working closely with Jackson Green Waste to Energy Private Limited. It's one of the fastest growing company in new and renewable energy and fuels, including hydrogen ecosystem and CBG. And while doing this, we've been part of a few Supreme Court cases, NGT petitions, High Court hearings, etc. So that has, by default, pushed us to delve deeper into what the constitutional rights, responsibilities of our urban local bodies are, and how industry can present solutions to create a viable opportunity for our waste liabilities in urban cities to be converted into a renewable asset. Just to give an example of Pune, where we have a functional plant, in the past 3 years, we've processed close to 150,000 plus tons of food waste. We have generated close to 6,500 tons of CBG. 50% of that has been in association with the Satat OMCs in Pune, both IndianOil as well as the GAIL CGD MNGL, Maharashtra Natural Gas Limited. We also supply to industries like Mahindra, Asian Paints, etc., which are private industrial customers for direct combustion purposes. But a city like Pune provides an opportunity for about 1,000 tons of food waste, which is generated on a daily basis. This needs no aggregation. There is an urban local body which is responsible for collection, transport, and disposal. This is what the constitutional provisions of our laws and bylaws state, that this is the stated responsibility of the urban local body. These urban local bodies are headed by IAS officers. So, of course, centrally controlled, directed, advised, motivated to directions where as a country we need to move. If you look at the other city where we're working, which is Bangalore, we're talking about 2,500 tons of food waste generated on a daily basis. It's a waste liability that none of our urban cities want. And of course, CBG producers like us would, love that availability of continuous feedstock. Now, despite saying what we said about and drawing contrast with what Ashish drew earlier, that when you look at different feedstocks and some contrasting slides which said, for example, agri waste, aggregation in a small period of time, payment for the feedstock, etc., collection mechanisms to be put in place. In contrast, when you look at food waste, generated daily basis, whether it's Dashera, Diwali, Christmas, New Year, a weekend, non-weekend, generated on a daily basis, needs to be cleared from your city on a daily basis. Otherwise, there could be other health hazards, rats, rodents, etc. And guess what? There's absolutely no ceiling on offtake of gas. These are our cities which are connected to the grid. We have pipelines. We don't even need gaskets for that matter, right? So a city like Pune, for example, I'll give you one specific customer, which is Pune Municipal Bus Transport. We have about 1,300 CNG buses, and each bus consumes 70 kgs of CNG gas every day. That single customer requires 90,000 kgs of CNG gas every day, which can be replaced completely by the waste of the city itself. So you don't even really have to target industry or other private transport like the retail outlets, etc. That's the upside of the opportunity that we are really talking about. And of course, when you look at government programs like you have Swachh Bharat, which was launched with great pomp in 2014, and of course our cities have done great work because Swachh Bharat also set up a competitive process called the Swachh Sarvekshan, where our cities compete and they take pride in competing. And there are parameters and standards given for what qualifies a city for the Swachh Sarvekshan. And guess what? Amongst the top 3 is segregation of waste at source, collection of transportation in separate vehicles, and processing of these in a scientific manner. Now, if our cities are rated every year, spending hundreds and thousands of crores of rupees with advisors on board, mapping our cities, saying which city is generating how much of waste, and how is it been segregated at source, and how is it collected and transport, why is it that we have such a big gap on the processing? So we've tried to delve a bit deeper into this, the upcoming slide. What I also want to highlight over here is that when we are driving a program for CBG biofuel with all the right intent from the Ministry of Petroleum, how is it that like we have interactions with Ministry of Agriculture for the feedstock aggregation, or we are talking to cooperative sugar industries, etc. How is it the Ministry of Urban Development, which is a part and parcel, it's like the right hand and the left hand of the ministry, how is it that the Ministry of Urban Development is not aware of the program that the Ministry of Petroleum operates or runs? You talk to any random municipal commissioner today and ask about Satat. I don't think the awareness level is so high. I don't think our officers who lead city bus services, each city has a bus service which is also headed by an officer, IS officer, is aware of a program called Satat, and that CBG can be substituted and replacement of a fossil fuel. So I think there's some gap that needs to be really bridged just in purely at a first level awareness level, before we really even take deeper steps in this. And why specifically are we saying transport as a sector, though as an investor or a project developer, we believe that our manufacturing industries offer us a far better price. We are substituting a far expensive fuel like LPG or diesel. We walk away with much higher rates, which are not linked to market prices. So our operating prices on CBG sale to industries anywhere from 90 to 95 rupees versus what we realize in a Satat, which is in the range of 70 to 72 rupees. So there's a vast difference. But why transport as a sector specifically, if you look at especially the urban cities of India, are these statistics, that 98% of the energy of the transport sector today are met by petroleum products. So as a country, if we really have to open our eyes and grasp this opportunity, the lowest hanging fruit to my mind, and something that will touch most of our citizens' lives pretty quickly and mainstream. See, CBG is still be looked upon as one niche area where, some crazy guys are working and trying to do something. It is not mainstreaming itself. But we've seen these efforts, like for example, when we have IndianOil retail outlets or MNCL retail outlets with lot of awareness posters and banners, etc., talking about, hey, this gas that goes into your vehicle is made from waste. So awareness level is rising pretty rapidly. And this is the awareness level that's from social media point or, social engineering, just from a mindset point, is very important to drive in other metro cities, which each city has a potential of close to 5, 6, 7 projects of 250 to 300 tons each. So this overlap between the transport sector and the waste is something that is a very low-hanging fruit. So when we work with municipal corporations, the mandate to municipal corporations is that projects have to be driven by concession agreements, and concession agreements have to be driven by a tender. Now, the moment this tender word appears, okay, big investors are wary. Wary of what? Wary of governance. Why? Wary of governance because tender process is announced by, the administrative side, but decided by the political side. So there's a standing committee, there's a general body, right? And tender process is throwing in a lot of, I would say, uncertainty in the process. So the outcome is not sure, because we've seen in the past that, you have good definition in our MSW rules, that polluter pay principle, shared services paid for model, etc. But here comes, either a completely unaware company or a money bag who says, hey, you know what, polluter should not pay, polluter should be incentivized. So what happens? A reverse tipping happens. So, you don't pay any tipping fee. You know what? We'll incentivize you to produce more waste. Now, if the bylaws of the MSW rules are saying that a polluter has to pay, and if there is a bid in the tender which says that we will reverse tip you, why should that proposal be even considered in the first place? Just because, and then you go to the market and banks find you not to be reasonable on your DPR, on your project report, so early stage of the business, instead of having money retained into the business, making it interesting for other investors to really come in and having some quick successful projects on the ground, these projects start to get stalled. If they get stalled, overall confidence, oh my God, MSW has this problem. You know what? Okay, so back out. So we are seeing MSW tenders come on stream, but never bidded for. Never bidded for. Or if they're bidded for, then it takes longer than necessary time to just implement because of various permissions and approvals, etc., which gets intercepted by various vested interest, I would say, in the municipal corporation, including the collection and transporting contractors. So somewhere I think in this MSW stream, food waste is segregated. That's a law today, that food waste has to be segregated. We have a fantastic agency called the NGT, National Green Tribunal, which is today administering this, the implementation of these laws in most of our urban cities, right? So it's not possible that this waste cannot be segregated at source. While working deeply with 10, 12 cities that we've really focused and worked on, we also realized that in our urban cities, food waste is generated more outside the home than inside the home. So when we cook food at home, if we have surplus food, that surplus food goes into a smaller utensil and put into the refrigerator for the next day consumption, or given to a maid or a dog or a guy or a bakri or whatever, but it does not go to the waste bin. Whereas the same animal, the same citizens of India, when we are in a mall or a conference like this and we have a buffet system, this is where the waste is generated outside the home. So industrial canteens, marriage halls, 5-star hotels, restaurants, bars, pubs, IT parks with huge food courts, with a subsidized non-vegetarian thali at 60 rupees. You don't like the food, you just chuck it, man, you throw it. So the waste generation of food waste generated outside the house is 3 times more than what we generate inside the house. So if you look at a city like Bangalore, or if you look at a city like Pune, and you say our citizens in Pune are 45 lakh, guess how many bulk waste generators are there? 20,000, which includes hotels, restaurants, marriage halls, IT parks, etc. How much time should it take for an IS officer to rein in these 20,000? This should be quick and easy, because their licenses are with you, their health certificates are with you, you have officers who are visiting their premises and doing the audits. What does it take to ensure that segregation? And how is it that our 100 smart cities today don't have 100 CBG plants? Because smart is not about making paver block footpaths, and some energy efficient street lights. Smart is about being sustainable, processing your waste and running your transport on it. Then that smart will become sustainable. So I don't see a reason why should there be this mismatch between the Ministry of Petroleum and the Ministry of Urban Development. Whereas they're the right and the left hand, working in the same leadership. So I think there's a disconnect when you come to cities and when you look at food waste. So just some suggestions that come from our experience in working in this, please differentiate. The law is already stating that there has to be differentiation between commercial bulk waste generators and residential waste. Some of the municipal corporations have taken extreme steps of saying to the bulk generators, hey, you know what, from so and so date, we will not pick up your food waste. All right, that is one part of the implementation, but what do they do when you don't pick up that food waste? It's not that food waste is being disappeared, or it's not that the food waste is being packed to the customers and given to take home. That food waste goes into unauthorized vendors who are taking it here and there and dumping it in our own rivers, our own backyards, our own nalas, our own hills, our own valleys. And of course, they get away with it. So stating that I will not pick up waste of a bulk generator is not probably the solution, but to ensure that bulk generators do something about it. What can then be done is common facilities where bulk generate can haul their waste, like we have in industrial facilities, a common affluent treatment plant. So if I'm generating affluent, will you incentivize me to generate the affluent, or will you ask me to pay some fees to take my affluent to this scientific treatment plant so that the affluent can be processed and it's not polluting? The simple logic, the same logic is existing in so many other ways in our industries and societies, but we are failing to execute or see this as an opportunity when we are talking about food waste in the MSW stream. So I think if our cities just quickly wake up, these are programs, already cities have funds to do this. Smart City has multi-thousand crores of rupees sitting there to be utilized, but the waste and the transport, they don't see this bridge. They don't see that this waste can be processed and can be converted into sustainable gas that can replace fossil fuels. So I think that gap needs to be bridged. The polluter pay principle and the shared services paid for model need to be implemented like a patthar ki lakir, Anybody who goes beyond this and says, all right, I'm going to incentivize you to make the waste, get them out of the line, first and foremost. because that is where the whole system can get spoiled. Then the contractors are getting incentivized to say, all right, now I have the waste, where do I take it is my problem, not your problem. You know? So unless even a contractor is willing to take the waste and put up a processing plant himself, it's great. But until then, there has to be some discipline of channelizing these feedstock to CBG plants if these plants are created in the urban cities. The third and the most important point that I would like to raise from a land perspective, when we do city development plans, there are areas demarcated for fire brigade, gardens, schools, okay, public facilities, toilets, etc. How many cities in our development plans have demarcated garbage processing zones? We have dump sites. We don't have garbage processing zones. Those dump sites are mostly, inevitably, close to river banks. All our sewage treatment plants and all our dump sites are close to rivers and, if it's coastal belt, it's close to the coast. You look at Bombay, make a guess, where are the sewage treatment plants? Make a guess, where is the garbage dump site? It's along the coastal belt. Okay, so we are making provisions so that this waste is just put there, either created into a heap or just pushed into the flowing waters. So if something can be done about this garbage processing zone reservations in the development plan of city itself, I don't think the builder lobby who goes and lobbies so much to remove these kind of plants from city areas, saying that, these plants should go outside the city. A simple question to the builder lobby: when you build homes, don't you build toilets in the homes? And those toilets don't stink or what? Of course they do. So it cannot be possible that a city is generating waste, but we don't have place to process that waste. So some social issues, some political or administrative issues, and of course, the so-called handlers of the waste in between, who really don't care what really happens to that waste. Their job is to pick it up from point A and dump it onto point B. And these contracts are really structured by weight. So there is always going to be an incentive, to have higher quantities shipped so that you make more money on the transportation and collection contracts. It's a very simple thing, But if some interception here in this zone is really designed, it won't take too much to really come up with a creative solution. Push your IS officers to really come together. There are only 100 of them in 100 cities. We don't need too many people to get involved in this. It's a pretty simple, quick, straightforward hit that can be done within the next 12, 14, 24 months. You can see 500 plants on the ground with absolutely no problem. These are the cities where your oil companies, gas companies, and everybody have their gas lines, their own offices, their own licensing officers. There's absolutely no question in my mind that these 100 cities can go towards CBG, 3 to 4, 500 plants in the next 10, 12, 15 months. The technology is proven. Like I said earlier, we've processed. If we can process, I'm sure so many people in this room can process. We come from a background where we've just learned by experiencing it. Okay, we didn't start by saying we are PhD holders in food waste processing. But it's not rocket science. We are not creating Mangalyaan here. We are creating CBG from food waste. It's a pretty straightforward thing. So we've done that, and I'm sure 100 other companies will do it more efficiently. The question is to just put together an ecosystem which can fire the imagination of our policymakers. Put this 1 + 1 = 11 together, and I think that this low-hanging fruit is up for grabs. If we can get it to the right imaginative minds at the policy-making level, it would be a great win for the CBG industry. With this, I'll bring my presentation to an end. Thank you so much. The only other one point which is going to be covered later on, which is the CERs, I'll leave that. But I also think as CBG producers, we are a small community. Most of us use 60% of the equipments that we use are common. We all have gas roofs, we all have agitators, we all are buying steel, we all have pumps, we all have valves, etc. I don't see no reason why 25 of us can come together and collectively buy these, Somebody else is making money in Germany, somebody else is making money in some other countries. If you can just put a common pool, I think there's a price reduction of 30-40% waiting to happen. It's just that as CBG producers, and I really hope, Ashish ji, that this forum that we've created can put some of us together, like-minded individuals, and create an ecosystem where there's a win-win for everybody. But the biggest win, I think, is our nation, as a country, as our ministry. we should see this moving forward, but at a rapid pace. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nuriel. Was brutal indeed. I present another crazy guy, Narayan, co-founder Carbon Masters.
Thanks, Ashish. I think it's going to be difficult now. I'll try not to be repetitive. Just as a background, Kevin and I co-founded the company in the UK. I'm an environmental engineer from Bangalore. Went to do my master's. Post that, we set up the company, and then we thought we did quite well for the first 3 years. And then we thought, no, it's not here the emissions. India and China, go back to India, solve the problem. So Carbon Masters came to India. I set it up. Kevin and I both moved to India to sort of start this journey because we wanted to solve for India in India. And then then we soon realized that it's not only, carbon management is not going to give us the solution. It has to be specific actions, and therefore we started looking for solutions. And then in 2014, we launched Carbon Lights. I'll share the journey and how that went on. And then we realized that the biomass is a major issue. Availability is huge. Solar had already taken off. So we looked into specifically what in biomass, like he said, craziness drove, it was biogas. And then we said we're going to solve for this. And how would we start? And coming from Bangalore, Garden City had gotten into names of Garbage City. So he said, no, we'll pick this up and try and connect the dots. The waste going into landfill, methane emissions, the same methane captured into cylinders, excellent story. So we started our journey. So our experience till date, and starting with the first plant, we got shut down for the very reasons Nuriel was talking about, that we don't really allocate land parcels for waste processing. So as a young startup, we were looking about where to set up these plants, and there came 2 farmers saying that we could offer you land. We set it up, ran for about a year, and there were 65 people in the plant employed with CBGPF, processing about roughly about 15,000 tons annually. And then there was agitation in the village that there were no workers available for other works. This was a village where women were working in our plant, and then suddenly gotten into a lot of issues. Smell started becoming an issue, which was never an issue for the first 12 months. Then real estate started falling because of our plant. All understandably quite reasonable. We had several discussions and then concluded that we were too close to the village despite having all the permissions. And then we concluded that we're going to shut the plant. Mahindra were our partners and then they were entering the space brand new through Mahindra Waste to Energy. And then they said that they'll move out to Tirupati, and we said, okay, fine, we'll move into Tirupati. But we had the role of the project developer, including we took on logistics, collection and transportation, only to realize there's a huge mafia you can't handle. It's been an age-old business, somebody's livelihoods. You can't just enter into this space and say, I will start collecting food waste. Several threats, real assaults on our team. So we concluded that this is not going to be easy. So after that, you will see the feedstock collection is never been touched by us. We always work with partners now. And people have cracked it. So we said we're not going to solve the whole chain. So it was both from design, build, operate, and then we are going to even bring the feedstock to marketing and selling of the gas. But it all started at the front end that we want to reduce carbon emissions. So our brand Carbon Lights needed secure feedstock, solid plant operations to enable gas availability that we wanted to sell to customers who have fossil fuels. And then we realized that, okay, the second byproduct is also reducing chemical fertilizers, so thereby solving emissions both above the ground and below the ground. And now, 7-8 years later, we realize that the agri side of the story is much bigger if we were to implement this properly for a country whose soil health is in a real danger, where we have probably less than 10 to 15 years of solid agriculture left if we continue like this. Now, From the other projects, so we did a project in Tirupati as well as in Indore. These three projects were done from 2017 to about 2020 during the COVID period. Same old issues, feedstock doesn't come. If feedstock starts streamlining, then somebody comes and starts trying to arm twist you, and it's not regular supply. And the quantums, the quality all differs. We said we are going to start working on this, and I'll share the positive side now that we now have 3 more projects. It's about how you structure these projects, and we realized that getting solid support, getting government involved, local government involved, local communities involved is also extremely important. And then we also did one more move by partnering with waste management companies. So our latest joint venture with Hasrudala in Bangalore, Hasrudala Innovations, they collect waste from almost about 40,000 households on a daily basis. So we partnered with them and set up another joint venture called Sustainable Impacts, thereby tying in the hip, sort of say, so that the feedstock doesn't, it comes, and not a single day we have had issues with getting the feedstock, and there is source segregated quality feedstock that comes in. Similarly, in Siddipet, we have a project which is at a city level, which is about population of 150,000 to 200,000. Solid implementation on the ground. The minister wants to do it, so it's political will. And they made it to happen in literally 6 months' time, from no segregation to segregation. I'll show you some more information as we go on. So to date, we have about 6 projects experience-wise, and what are the problems and what needs to be fixed. So I was clearly told, stay focused, give out the challenges and the solutions. So I'll try and do that in my rest of the slides. And just to reiterate, we are from the entire chain, and then we've also started saying that which parts of the chain we don't want to operate. That's collection and transportation, but we build, design and build, we then operate, and then we sell and market the produce of both gas and fertilizer. And then the key element that we need to realize is, unless we get the carbon financing or carbon credits, these projects won't be viable. Again, scale depends, it depends on the scale, etc. But I'm just saying on a broad level, if you want to solve it across India, that's the narrative. So again, I want to repeat this, 35 million tons to 70 million tons availability. The latest reports from the government side talk about 62 million tons, roughly about 35 million tons of that is organic waste. And here I'm not talking about food waste, I'm talking about organic fraction of the MSW, slightly different to my other colleague. We are treating including the peels, etc. that are left over from households. And the slightly reduced yields, potential of anywhere between 1 to 2 million tons of bio-CNG per year. And there is the other big opportunity. I'm not sure about the other feedstocks which are also considered renewable, but here in this case the baseline is it's going into landfill. So there is about 35 to 70 million tons of CO2 emissions to be reduced because of methane avoidance and replacement of fossil fuels. And then the last part is that we can also support regenerative agriculture, or basically improving the soil organic carbon. So in terms of challenges, it's the same list but slightly in a different order. The first one on the top of the list does make the unsegregated waste. We already have an SWM 2016 rules. What it requires is implementation. We don't need any law, it's already there. We cannot process, the quality of waste is extremely important for bio-CNG projects, and therefore source segregation is the simplest low-cost technology for India. We don't need machines that cut open the plastic covers and then spoil the organic manure. We need segregation at source, and it's a simple thing to be done. The next one is, as my other colleague was saying, municipalities do not have budgets. They do not even know what needs to be done. They're happy to spend 2,000 rupees per ton on composting, but they're not ready to do these projects where they can actually cut down that completely, cut down that cost completely. In certain cases, if they were to fund, I'm in for even sharing a revenue or a profit sharing, but the infrastructure has to be invested by them. That's the stark differentiation when I'm saying do a royalty, but if the municipality or the government invests into the project, and that's because they're taking the big risk then by investing into the project. The third is, it is a highly political feedstock. I mean, if you see all the big players who have entered the space, they are not getting into MSW. That's probably because, I mean, I'm sure they could have solved it if they wanted to. And I'm still hoping that some of the companies will start working on this. And I think through this forum, if we can start working on certain policies at state level, this is extremely local. It could be a corporator or an MLA who could solve for your feedstock. And of course the the municipal commissioners, etc. So it needs to be dealt locally. It cannot be handled everything through the center. It has to be a local issue that needs to be solved. And then this big issue about what I told about our first plant going through a problem. By the way, we actually shut it down for about 8 months, 9 months, and then we went and sat back with the village, and we've started doing composting there. So we don't do bio-CNG because that was bringing more of high moisture, food waste and organic waste that was causing them issue. So we've now resorted to about 10 people working there and just doing organic manure. So, but it taught us a lot of lessons that, you need to have solid site selection, work with the local communities before you set up these projects. Unlike paddy straw or any other projects, this requires local community involvement. And again, the storage is not even an option. It will cause odor. Ideally, a couple of days would really help for these projects, but it does have a lot of issues around just storing the feedstock. Now, in terms of just interventions, these were the challenges that I told in the previous slide, but now I'm just focusing on what sort of support or interventions is required. In fact, the policy is there, we just need to get it implemented. And I fully endorse that, unlike, I mean, I'm not even sure if your cost of collection of paddy straw is for 4,500, up to 4,500, and you're getting a 10% yield, how 46 rupees price will ever work? Okay, so we'll come to that in a separate thing. But on MSW, unless, I mean, it's a very simple thing, 150 rupees to 200 rupees per month. It's not a big issue. We're spending a lot more on various things. If that kind of fees is collected, the entire circular economy can be implemented in every house, every city. We're already doing it for 40 to 50,000 households. The Punjab minister was there last week, and he said, I want to do this in Punjab, come and come and see us. And we are doing that in a couple of days. But that's the kind of initiatives that the governments need to realize, that 150 rupees to 200 rupees, probably, that's the roundabout price that most cities, it will differ. I think Indore is doing it about 70 to 80 rupees. So you can do it for smaller cities at a slightly lesser price. But that's the amount we need to implement if we have to get these projects clean feedstock, where plastics and other recyclables can be extracted with using either waste pickers or through NGOs, and then the clean feedstock ends up in our plants. And unless we do that, we are not going to get this feedstock readily available for bio-CNG projects. And the second thing, we all know that, I mean, after the first few projects, we have realized that we can't solve the fact that these collection and transportation agencies who are already working in these cities for at least 40, 50 years can be replaced. So if their payments can be made because of them delivering the right quality of feedstock to our plants, then that's how their payment mechanism should trigger. And then a waste and CNT collection operator will obviously want to give you clean feedstock with the right weightage, and that will trigger the payment for them. And they shouldn't be getting paid unless they actually deliver the kind of feedstock to these facilities. And then we don't have to get into collection and transportation. We don't have to get into this whole mafia issue, and probably solve for the feedstock which is available on a daily basis, 365 days. This is a small 20 seconds video on how we've been involved in a Siddipet project where it's getting collected. And this is all it takes. There's one person standing. It took 3 months of continuously telling the residents. It's being collected from 150,000 households. So if that one small town can do, every other city can do it. I'll move on in the interest of time. And you can come visit us any day. This is the kind of feedstock And that's because, not because we have done some magic, it's because that they're scared that the minister is going to fire them. So the entire municipality is involved, they're driving it. And therefore, the quantum of waste and the quality of waste does not dip even for a single day. Second thing that we also feel is very important is to empower municipalities, like get them to do PPP model projects. Most of them, and there's a lot of awareness that needs to be built. They think the moment they're giving waste and they're giving land, they should get money. And suddenly it's like, what are you doing with our waste? You'll have to pay us. Somebody, there has to be some standard protocols on what these projects can do commercially, so that it's transparent, and then there is no expectation. Like, they wouldn't ask for setting up an STP plant, that what kind of money, like just like what Nuriel was saying. It's not the case. There's lack of awareness. They need to be made understood, and there's also a lot of confusion when somebody setting up a 5-ton plant for a small city or a 50-ton plant for a medium-sized city, and somebody setting up a 500-ton plant like in what Indore has done. These three sizes of plants have completely different set of economics. One cannot be compared. And yet I have been in so many discussions where I have had to continuously go back, where they're seeing us as the guys who are coming to try and make huge amount of money here, to think that, oh, you're putting up a plant and therefore you'll have to invest and you'll make so many crores. And that's not the case when you're going at smaller scale plants. And bigger scale plants are yet to be proven on both getting the feedstock continuously and their commercial viability. So I think from our experience, the range of projects is anywhere between 100 to 200 tons. In cases you can probably go 300, 500, but that all needs to be supported with solid feedstock. And this is one quick thing. When we actually get support, we were struggling for land, and after our first experience we said we're not going to go for land unless and until it's an industrial area or it's a government allocated area. So out of the 17.5 acres in Siddipet, they gave us 2.5 acres, and we created an existing landfill and converted it into our project. And that's working fine. Not a single complaint. It's all in fact, they're happy that the problem is solved, because there is no more waste that's being accumulated. So in fact, they've now unlocked almost about 15 acres of land for other utilization like plastics, recycling, etc. And the last one I want to just leave with is the empowering of RWAs. This is a project that we did inside Bangalore in Kormangala, where there was about 2 acres of land, very unlikely in Kormangala, high residential costs and real estate costs. But there was one set of land which was not being utilized because it was under a high tension wire. And on that side, we've found a patch where we've set up a project that won the Better Together award from the Ministry of German government and Ministry of Environment from Germany. And the reason it won, because it's the politicians coming together, the communities coming together, and entrepreneurs like us coming together. Therefore, there is solutions, and based on this, the BBMP have now awarded us 11 projects across different wards. Bangalore has 225 wards. Now, I'm not saying that we need to do small scale or large scale. It's about what works for every city, what's available, and if there is land available for 500 tons, great, do it. And the feedstock available. But we still think that it's challenging and you can't do too many projects. So we need to solve for this 100 to 200 range and start solving cities at the problem in each of these cities. I think that's about it. I'm still under 10 minutes, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are still a couple of minutes away. So I'll now request Atul to talk about press mud as well as animal waste which he's using in his plant.
Good afternoon, all of you. Let me assure you that this is the final presentation of this session, and I don't want it to be a hurdle between you and your lunch. So I will try to have it as faster as possible in terms of not repeating those things which we have discussed in comprehensive way. Indian Oil Corporation's Mr. Pravin ji has covered it many aspects in terms of our parent company. They are responsible across the country, developed various activities under the same segment. So I will try to avoid those discussions point. In the beginning, very brief about the facility at Namakkal in Tamil Nadu. This is one of the largest facility in terms of actual delivery of CBG, 15-ton facility per day, and this has came in the very early stage of 2000
fuels. And then the last part is that we can also support regenerative agriculture or basically improving the soil organic carbon. So in terms of challenges, it's the same list but slightly in a different order. The first one on the top of the list does make the unsegregated waste. We already have an SWM 2016 rules. What it requires is implementation. We don't need any law. It's already there. We cannot process, the quality of waste is extremely important for bio-CNG projects. And therefore, source segregation is the simplest low-cost technology for India. We don't need machines that cut open the plastic covers and then spoil the organic manure. We need segregation at source, and it's a simple thing to be done. The next one is, as my other colleague was saying, municipalities do not have budgets. They do not even know what needs to be done. They're happy to spend 2,000 rupees per ton on composting, but they're not ready to do these projects where they can actually cut down that completely, cut down that cost completely. In certain cases, if they were to fund, I'm in for even sharing a revenue or a profit sharing, but the infrastructure has to be invested by them. That's the stark differentiation when I'm saying do a royalty, but if the municipality or the government invests into the project, and that's because they're taking the big risk then by investing into the project. The third is, it is a highly political feedstock. If you see all the big players who have entered the space, they're not getting into MSW. That's probably because, I'm sure they could have solved it if they wanted to. And I'm still hoping that some of the companies will start working on this. And I think through this forum, if we can start working on certain policies at state level, this is extremely local. It could be a corporator or an MLA who could solve for your feedstock. And of course the municipal commissioners, etc. So it needs to be dealt locally. It cannot be handled everything through the center. It has to be a local issue that needs to be solved. And then this big issue about what I told about our first plant going through a problem. By the way, we actually shut it down for about 9 months, and then we went and sat back with the village, and we've started doing composting there. So we don't do bio-CNG because that was bringing more of high moisture, food waste and organic waste that was causing them issue. So we've now resorted to about 10 people working there and just doing organic manure. So, but it taught us a lot of lessons that, you need to have solid site selection, work with the local communities before you set up these projects. Unlike paddy straw or any other projects, this requires local community involvement. And again, the storage is not even an option. It will cause odor. Ideally, a couple of days would really help for these projects, but it does have a lot of issues around just storing the feedstock. Now, in terms of just interventions, these were the challenges that I told in the previous slide, but now I'm just focusing on what sort of support or interventions is required. In fact, the policy is there. We just need to get it implemented. And I fully endorse that, unlike, I'm not even sure if your cost of collection of paddy straw is for 4,500, up to 4,500, and you're getting a 10% yield, how 46 rupees price will ever work? Okay, so we'll come to that in a separate thing. But on MSW, unless, it's a very simple thing, 150 rupees to 200 rupees per month. It's not a big issue. We're spending a lot more on various things. If that kind of fees is collected, the entire circular economy can be implemented in every house, every city. We're already doing it for 40 to 50,000 households. The Punjab minister was there last week, and he said, I want to do this in Punjab, come and see us. And we're doing that in a couple of days. But that's the kind of initiatives that the governments need to realize, that 150 rupees to 200 rupees, probably, that's the roundabout price that most cities, it will differ. I think Indore is doing it about 70 to 80 rupees. So you can do it for smaller cities at a slightly lesser price. But that's the amount. You need we need to implement if we have to get these projects clean feedstock where plastics and other recyclables can be extracted with using either waste pickers or through NGOs, and then the clean feedstock ends up in our plants. And unless we do that, we are not going to get this feedstock readily available for bio-CNG projects. And the second thing, we all know that, I mean, after the first few projects, we have realized that we can't solve the fact that these collection and transportation agencies who are already working in these cities for at least 40, 50 years can be replaced. So if their payments can be made because of them delivering the right quality of feedstock to our plants, then that's how their payment mechanism should trigger. And then a waste and CNT collection operator will obviously want to give you clean feedstock with the right weightage, and that will trigger the payment for them. And they shouldn't be getting paid unless they actually deliver the kind of feedstock to these facilities. And then we don't have to get into collection and transportation. We don't have to get into this whole mafia issue, and probably solve for the feedstock which is available on a daily basis, 365 days. This is a small 20 seconds video on how we've been involved in a Siddipet project where it's getting collected. And this is all it takes. There's one person standing. It took 3 months of continuously telling the residents. It's being collected from 150,000 households. So if that one small town can do, every other city can do it. I'll move on in the interest of time. And you can come visit us any day. This is the kind of feedstock. And that's because, not because we have done some magic, it's because they're scared that the minister is going to fire them. So the entire municipality is involved. They're driving it. And therefore, the quantum of waste and the quality of waste does not dip even for a single day. Second thing that we also feel is very important is to empower municipalities, like get them to do PPP model projects. Most of them, and there's a lot of awareness that needs to be built. They think the moment they're giving waste and they're giving land, they should get money. And suddenly it's like, what are you doing with our waste? You'll have to pay us. Somebody, there has to be some standard protocols on what these projects can do commercially, so that it's transparent, and then there is no expectation. Like, they wouldn't ask for setting up an STP plant, that what kind of money, like just like what Nuriel was saying. It's not the case. There's lack of awareness. They need to be made understood. And there's also a lot of confusion when somebody setting up a 5-ton plant for a small city or a 50-ton plant for a medium-sized city, and somebody setting up a 500-ton plant like in what Indore has done. These three sizes of plants have completely different set of economics. One cannot be compared. And yet I have been in so many discussions where I have had to continuously go back, where they're seeing us as the guys who are coming to try and make huge amount of money here, to think that, oh, you're putting up a plant and therefore you'll have to invest and you'll make so many crores. And that's not the case when you're going at smaller scale plants. And bigger scale plants are yet to be proven on both getting the feedstock continuously and their commercial viability. So I think from our experience, the range of projects is anywhere between 100 to 200 tons. In cases you can probably go 300, 500, but that all needs to be supported with solid feedstock. And this is one quick thing. When we actually get support, we were struggling for land, and after our first experience we said we're not going to go for land unless and until it's an industrial area or it's a government allocated area. So out of the 17.5 acres in Siddipet, they gave us 2.5 acres, and we created an existing landfill and converted it into our project. And that's working fine. Not a single complaint. It's all in fact, they're happy that the problem is solved because there is no more waste that's being accumulated. So in fact, they've now unlocked almost about 15 acres of land for other utilization like plastics, recycling, etc. And the last one I want to just leave with is the empowering of RWAs. This is a project that we did inside Bangalore in Kormangala, where there was about 2 acres of land very unlikely in Kormangla, high residential costs and real estate costs. But there was one set of land which was not being utilized because it was under a high tension wire. And on that side, we've found a patch where we've set up a project that won the Better Together award from the Ministry of German government and Ministry of Environment from Germany. And the reason it won, because it's the politicians coming together, the communities coming together, and entrepreneurs like us coming together. Therefore, there is solutions, and based on this, the BBMP have now awarded us 11 projects across different wards. Bangalore has 225 wards. Now, I'm not saying that, we need to do small scale or large scale. It's about what works for every city, what's available, and if there is land available for 500 tons, great, do it. And the feedstock available. But we still think that it's challenging and you can't do too many projects. So we need to solve for this 100 to 200 range and start solving cities at the problem in each of these cities. I think that's about it. I'm still under 10 minutes, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are still a couple of minutes away. So I'll now request Atul to talk about press mud as well as animal waste which he's using in his plant.
Good afternoon, all of you. Let me assure you that this is the final presentation of this session, and I don't want it to be a hurdle between you and your lunch. So I will try to have it as faster as possible in terms of not repeating those things which we have discussed in comprehensive way. Indian Oil Corporation's Mr. Pravin ji has covered it many aspects in terms of our parent company. They are responsible across the country, developed various activities under the same segment. So I will try to avoid those discussions point. In the beginning, very brief about the facility at Namakkal in Tamil Nadu. This is one of the largest facility in terms of actual delivery of CBG, 15-ton facility per day. And this has came in the very early stage of 2019 when Satat has launched. So if anybody wanted in more detail in terms of technicalities, we'll catch up during the break sessions. So, in terms of the feedstock availability at location, this is typically a combination of agri waste and animal waste, plus we have some industry waste too. So, typically press mud and chicken litter, this is a combination in terms of 70-30% of ratio. 70% is press mud. Apart from that, we have dairy effluents seasonally available, we have milky mist from ice cream industry, we have juice effluents from the adjoining food industry, we have sago thippi in the certain pockets of the year, we have palm oil sludge available as a raw material. So it's a good combination in terms of seasonal feed availability for the Namakkal location. And typically, this is a chart to show you that what is our requirement vis-a-vis what is available. So in that terms, I can say that fairly at this stage, we are in position to gather the raw material. It may not be a situation if there are multiple plants in the location. So that we will be discussing in the next part of the interaction. So as such, if you see now 45,000 sort of tons of press mud, we can gather it. Our requirement is in the range of 35 to 38,000, and we have to store it for the obvious reasons. Chicken slurry is available across the year, barring some disturbances during the monsoon season. And if it is Tamil Nadu, the core duration is like November, December, something like that. And rest of these are the seasonal industrial waste. So this is the chart which reflects us in terms of feedstock availability across the year. Here we can see press mud is not available during say June to August, and again in the month of November. So the plant is based majorly on the press mud, so we have to store it. We have to plan it for at least 3-4 months in advance. Similarly, chicken litter is throughout the year. Mango sludge is seasonal availability. It is available, say, from this month, like May and so, and then again in September, October cycle. Sago thipi is available in certain pockets of the year. So we have to plan our raw material scheduling at the beginning of the year in terms of transportation arrangement as well, and having contract sign off with all these suppliers well in advance. So coming back to the feedstock pricing trend, here you can see in the first graph the landed cost of press mud. If you see in say 4 years of span, in 2018 to 2022, the increase is in the range of approximately 18 to 20%. Similarly, transportation is one of the major component attached to with this raw material, and this transportation is increased in terms of the fuel cost like 25 to 30% in last 4 years. And if you have to compare with the gas prices under Satat scheme or under whatever the contract you have, it's not in that proportion. So that itself is a huge challenge for any industry. So in brief, I will talk about here the challenges, which is the topic we intended to discuss here. So availability, there is an inconsistency in certain pockets of the year. So you have to store it. And your digestion system, if it is an anaerobic digestion system, it's very sensitive in terms of having consistency of this raw material. Sometimes inadequate supplies, sometimes you have a change in supplier itself from sugar industry to sugar industry will have an effect in terms of the your overall yield as well as the production efficiency. If I have to stock it for 4 or 5 months, like sugar industry, I have to pay in advance, I have to put a money, that's a huge one, some point of time in crores. Then preserving this feedstock for a longer duration. So that's also a big challenge today. And we as an industry have to have a sort of research for this particular challenge in terms of how can we hold that yield, how can some sort of solutions can be generated through a proper industry collaboration, which can help us, because we can't avoid storing. Otherwise, you have to stop your production. So other relevant things like non-segregated and contaminated feed. So you have to put an additional money in terms of man hours. You have to engage agencies and then remove all those stuff. So this is on the overall how it affect the overall costing of the production in terms of feedstock challenges. So support required, of course, the first thing which we are talking here is planning and authorization. New plant authorization after due consideration of the feedstock need to be planned. As I was telling you, we have one plant in one district, so availability is manageable. If there are 6-7 numbers of plant in the same district, then it will be a challenging again. So morning, Honorable Minister was talking that 5,000 plants, we all are intending and working towards it. So we have approximately 800 districts in the country today. And when we have to achieve 5,000 numbers of plant, it will be like 6 to 7 numbers of plant in one district. If your feedstock at this stage is challenging in terms of catering 1 or 2 mid-sized plants of 10 to 15 ton, then what will be a scenario when each district will have 7 to 8 number of plant? And we have a few examples like Panipat biorefinery. We have few other examples in northern part of the country, including Punjab, Himachal, Haryana, and the adjoining states, the challenges related to raw material. So there has to be a intervention required here. Price again, it started with sort of an social engineering mechanism initially, and with a lot of expectation and hope that the stakeholder in terms of the end farmer will be very happy to have this thing in place. He don't have to burn it, he don't have to take additional heat. There is an agency available, they will gather from it. There will be a sort of very cordial relation between this couple of stakeholders, but it's not going in that direction. So that's how it's important to have some intervention at this stage if you have to really cross those 500,000 or more than those numbers in terms of how to control it. So there has to be sort of thought that how to put this product in a basket of essential category. How to have a mechanism available at district level in terms of district collector, district supply officer, district agriculture officer, whereby they can control this costing, as well as they have some sort of committee which advises that this is a raw material going for the green gas. It was a challenge earlier, and industry has came forward with lot of capex invested there. So it cannot be uncontrolled, or it cannot be a sort of carteling prices. So that is a need of our today. In terms of storage, industry, apart from capex, industry cannot really put money in terms of buying and land in nearby areas. So there has to be a support required from the state ministry and some scheme from the government of India, that how a non-fertile piece of land or additional surplus piece of land which they have available with them, they can be provided with the lease basis to the industry. So in terms of suppliers, again, what is happening today at the farmers level, aggregators level today, that cannot happen at the sugar industry level. Sugar industry also has to act as a big brother for this industry. For them, this is a sort of byproduct, but for CBG, it's a main product. CBG industry cannot survive without having this raw material available. So that, I think that sort of understanding need to be generated between the industries. Technology, the silaging technology which can help in terms of protecting the sort of efficacy of the material. How can we improve the efficiency of CBG from this material by storing over couple of months? In some cases, we will be storing here in northern part of the country for 11 to 12 months. So again, research from the Indian houses, some foreign collaboration has to happen. A lot of agencies are involved today, including TERI is there, Praj is there. So we need help from this type of industries, organizations, in terms of how can we overall protect the raw material, which is a basic backbone of this industry. So with this thought, I will close my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Atul. We have the last one now, and then I'm going to make a really quick one right now. Can we have the... So a lot of points related to the agri part have already been covered. I'm not going to repeat those things. I'll just maybe talk about one or two topics which we have experienced. These are again some numbers. We are talking about the kind of overall biomass which is surplus. We're talking about roughly 200 million tons. More than 80% of that is getting burnt. There is no validation to these numbers, because every forum I get to hear a different million in front of it, right? So let's be not too critical about these numbers. Yes, if we believe in those numbers, then we are talking about 15 million tons of CBG as a potential over here, having 2 lakh crore of an investment potential. What is important here is, if these numbers are to be believed, 160 million tons getting burnt, which means 64 million acres is currently impacted, which is generating about 270 million tons of CO2 emission reduction potential which we have. That is the kind of emission which is being generated. What do we need to realize this potential? This part is already covered by Pravin ji. I'll not repeat it. XC2 is the answer for dealing with the agri residue. And this is one thing which has been taken up by this forum as well with Ministry of Agriculture. And we have talked about coming out with a PPP based capital subsidy kind of a program, which is expected to be launched soon. The second thing also has been addressed by Pravin ji, limited access to the working capital or affordable financing for operating these biomass value chains. So again, I'm not going to repeat this part. The third thing is also been said, storage infrastructure. This is quite an underrepresented and quite heavily misunderstood topic as to the kind of level of detailing which is needed to create a storage infrastructure which is conducive for protecting the biomass. It is not just dumping it on the ground. So it is a lot more than that. This is something which I thought I'll share it with you. The message was communicated by Pravinji here, that some kind of incentive has to be there for the CBG producer. This is the kind of cost a CBG producer has to spend, agri residue based. This is the cost for different kind of feedstocks. We talk about paddy, we talk about, wheat is out of the business case altogether because of the overall pricing, what we are talking about ranging between 6,000 to 8,000 rupees per ton. Then we have mustard, we have sugarcane, we have maize. These are all the feedstock types which we have tried. We have got good results from a biogas point of view, but there is a huge commercial dimension to it, and that's the reason why I wanted to share it with you. Of course, it's very clear why everybody talks about paddy. There are two reasons. One, it is getting burnt. Second, it is the cheapest. And it is the cheapest because it is getting burnt, right? So these are all linked factors over here. So right now there is no compensation for the feedstock cost to the CBG producer, and we need to come out with some kind of mechanism wherein the CBG producer is getting directly incentivized, compensated for this. There is also no uniform statewide policy for farmer compensation. We heard, I think in the previous sessions, that for the state of Haryana, 1,000 rupees per ton has, per acre, I think, has been allocated. But again, why can't we have a uniform policy? Why do I have to hedge between Haryana or Punjab or UP or MP? There has to be a uniform policy across, right? So this is something which one has to be looking at. And even lastly, what I would like to close with is, currently we have a very transactional based aggregation model. I remember my suppliers only when I need it, and after that it is forgotten. The way everybody forgets stubble burning from October, November onwards. Rest of the period we don't talk about it. It's a event which happens between Diwali and Christmas. That's it, right? But we need to evolve from this transactional based model to a more continuous. We need to keep our suppliers engaged throughout the year, because collection might happen on a seasonal basis, but feeding into the production happens on a daily basis. So we need to engage our communities on a daily basis as to how this feedstock is brought from the storage locations to the production units. And eventually this model has to evolve into a more circular concept, where we talk about the FOM being brought back to the same farmers where the feedstock has been collected from. So it is, in the true sense, circular economy being implemented. So it is no longer just a buzzword, but we are actually doing it at our plant at the moment. The FOM which is getting generated from our unit is going back to the farms at the present at no cost. So this is what we have to eventually move towards. Not the no cost part, we need some kind of value to it, but at least in terms of logistics, that's how it needs to be implemented. So that brings us to an end of this first much longer session as compared to what was originally planned, but I'm sure everybody here is here for the session and not for the lunch. So, but now we can move for the lunch. Thanks a lot for your attention, and we can have a quick picture. Let's not waste time on the mementos. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. The lunch is open, right? Thanks again for your attention.